For more on what's changed in Zimbabwe since the departure of Mugabe, I spoke with Tendai Marima. Tendai is a freelance journalist in Zimbabwe. And I asked her if there have been any policy improvements over the last 12 months.
To a certain extent, yes, we have. In terms of, particularly in terms of the isolationist policies that President Robert Mugabe pursued. President Mnangagwa now is on a very, very strong engagement policy. However, in terms of some of the concerns that people have had in terms of democracy and an economic turnaround, those have been slow to deliver, and people are wondering, what's happening and when will we start to feel the real changes on the ground.
So what are the most pressing economic issues right now for Zimbabweans?
The most pressing issues right now are the issues of cash shortages and also issues of commodity shortages. So, for example, right now, because the country is struggling to find foreign currency for us to be able to get our economy going, we're having problems with importing fuel and also with importing raw materials that we need in the production of basic commodities such as bread, cooking oil, and drinks.
And we're also seeing that inflation is still an issue, recently soaring to a 10-year high of 21%. Talk about some of the factors behind that.
Some of the factors behind that have to do with high government expenditure and also with the fact that the country has to rely on a currency that's not its own. So because we have a very, very high import bill, that's much higher than, the goods that we export, it ends up putting us back into a deficit. So that combined with high government expenditure as well, considering that we've just come from an election that cost us a lot of money, all of these things factor into Zimbabwe's deficit bill, and this is what's put us in the position that we are in today.
So as we look at President Mnangagwa's expectations in terms of what he'd like to change and the sorts of policies he'd like to enact to really boost Zimbabwe's economy, what are his economic priorities?
At the moment, his economic priorities are about getting production moving. They're about getting investors to come and invest in Zimbabwe, because his big mantra is Zimbabwe is open for business. But at the same time, he's telling Zimbabweans themselves that we have to buckle down and cut back on the lives that we have. We have to make sacrifices in order for us to be able to get over this hurdle and get, our deficit down. But some of the measures that he's taken have been very painful for people, and it's made it very difficult to cope under current circumstances.
So as foreign investors are taking a look at Zimbabwe, what is the country doing to re-engage investors and inspire more confidence in the economy?
Okay, to try and inspire more confidence in the economy, like for example in the mining sector, what the government has tried to do is to try and give more concessions to miners, like particularly gold and platinum miners, because gold and platinum are some of the country's top mining exports, and they are the ones that contribute significantly to the country's GDP. So for those miners, he's allowed them to retain 55% of their foreign export earnings, which is much higher than it was a few months ago when it was set at 35%. In terms of trying to attract other investors as well, there are some concessions that the government is trying to make in terms of the kinds of duties that people are charged for importing materials that they might need, for example, in manufacturing, or in terms of trying to make concessions depending on the kind of investment that one wants to make. It really depends on the size of the investment. For big investors, there may be some concessions that are made, but for the smaller investor, there really needs to be a lot more that's done by the government, and also for the indigenous investor as well.
And so as we look at the bright spots in the economy and how all this might affect the life of everyday Zimbabweans, what's your outlook?
My outlook, unfortunately, right now, given the way that the situation is, it's not very positive, because what we are hoping for and what Zimbabwe needs right now is a radical turnaround. Some of the decisions that the government has to make have to be hard decisions to cut down on its own expenditure, hard decisions on having a very strict monetary policy that's at the same time liberal in terms of the concessions that it makes in allowing the currency to float, and also in trying to curb the growth of the black market. But at the same time, it has to be one that is an investor friendly policy. An investor-friendly monetary policy, in that investors will be able to get their money out of Zimbabwe, or they'll be able to, bring money in, but at the same time get money out so that they can continue to do business in Zimbabwe. So government really has to make it much, much easier for people to be able to work here and bring more money here if we really intend to turn things around in the country.